I'd like to call this meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderman Black.
Here.
Alderman Fazzini.
Here.
Alderman Fruin.
Here.
Alderman Lauer.
Here.
Lauer. Alderman Sage.
Here.
Alderman Willamway.
Here.
Alderman Stearns.
Here.
Alderman McDade.
Here.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Before we get started on this agenda this evening, I want to let you know that Mayor Renner is in Los Angeles this evening with Mayor Coos, working on some economic development issues out there. I'm very happy for him, and I'm sure he's a bit warmer than we are. Also this evening, we're going to be debuting our electronic voting system, so fingers crossed that that works okay, and we'll see how the control panel works. So first of all, a happy event, oath of office for Wesley DeWitt as firefighter. Can we have Chief Kimmerling and Officer DeWitt? And family members, if you'd like to come on up here and take photographs, just come up and make yourselves at home.
Mayor and Council, thank you very much. Again, a wonderful evening for myself to be able to swear in one of our new firefighters who has successfully completed his probationary period with us at the Bloomington Fire Department. And I'd like to welcome Wesley DeWitt. Wesley here was born and raised in Watseka, Illinois. His parents are Charles and Pam DeWitt, and he has a younger sister, Emily, all who are here with us tonight. Wesley graduated from WCHS in 2006 and then attended Parkland College, graduating in 2008 with an associate's degree in fire science. Wesley then went on to Kankakee Community College and graduated in 2010 with a second associate's degree, achieving his paramedic certification. Wesley met his wife Kelly in 2009 and they were married in 2012. She is also here tonight. They are also welcomed their new son Eli on October 24th. I asked him on the way in, I think this is his first visit outside the house other than a doctor's appointment.
Oh, wow.
Wesley worked for IMH Ambulance in Watseka for 3 years prior to being hired on with us, and we are happy to have him here. He's done an outstanding job, and he's actually had a very, very busy first year with us, as we've had a lot of calls that he's had an opportunity to build his experience on, and his officers speak very, very well of him and how well he's done during his probationary period. So, Wesley.
If you want to come up here, then Tracy Covert will administer the oath of office.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Wesley DeWitt.
I, Wesley DeWitt,
Having been appointed
to
the position of firefighter
the position of firefighter
in the city of Bloomington
in the city of Bloomington
and the county of McLean,
in the county of McLean,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of firefighter
of the position of firefighter
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you. God bless you. And Mom, my goodness, congratulations to you too. What a little sweetie. That's pretty good. His first outing to see Daddy get sworn in is pretty darn special. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. We now have a presentation from the Juvenile Justice Council on the Youth Build Summer Jobs 2013 report. I believe we have Kathy Jo Waltz here. Thank you so much. And welcome,
Thank you.
and we look forward to your report.
First, I want to thank you for having us. There are several members of the Juvenile Justice Council right behind me, they said. But we wanted to publicly thank the council for your support of the Summer Jobs Program, and we happily report that the program is having successful results.
You pulled the microphone a little bit closer to you. Thank you.
You're on TV.
Oh, great.
That helps. Thanks. I was trying to ignore that part on
Yeah.
the website that said streaming live. We've worked towards having data for these programs to show how they're successful, and we're very satisfied with the final report, which I know you all have a copy of in your packet. But more importantly, we were impressed with Youth Build and how they facilitated the program. I visited the program over the summer, and some of the others did as well, and we attended the graduation ceremony, and we were very impressed with Youth Build and the juveniles and the students that they had in their program and their individual successes. It's nice to have the data to back up, to validate what we have observed, and to share with our funding sources. A goal of the Juvenile Justice Council is to help control, I don't know about too much control, but control criminal activity and to provide the youth opportunity to reach their full potential. I really think that this program is helping to that end. I've worked at the Juvenile Detention Center since it opened almost 20 years ago, and over the years at JDC, and I'm sure others on our council who have dealt with any sort of juveniles, whether in school or other community agencies or juvenile court services, can think of some kids that we've dealt with that this program really would have benefited. And I really feel that the community is lucky to have a program such as this. I know you have the report. I was going to bring the director of the program with us and maybe some of the kids, but with such a short period of time, they did a presentation for our council, and they were very excited and very impressive, and I just didn't think the 5 minutes would probably give them enough, at least sharing it with me as well. So anything, they, I'm sure, would be glad to come at any time. We can bring them anytime you'd like to. And Alicia Lennard is the director of that program, and she really shared her pride and pleasure at the commitment of the youth we had. So if there's any questions, I'm sure I will try to answer. I know you have some background information, but I have backup, I'm told. So.
Thank you for speaking on behalf of Youth Build. I think all of us have watched that program grow and blossom, and it really does transform lives, and it's just great to see that it's getting some support and recognition and taking off. Are there questions? Alderman Fazzini?
Yeah, not a question. I just looked at the statistics of 85% having previously high school disciplinary issues, but 90.9% graduated from this program. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, it's wonderful. Wonderful.
We can't commend you enough for, I'd rather, instead of spending time talking to us, they keep doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why we really thought the data helped. Dr. Catanini from ISU helped compile the data and develop the elements that they wanted to look at. And I think it's really shown that what we thought anecdotally was happening. So.
And in addition to what Karen just said, that it does change lives, if you just do the mathematics, whatever it costs, this is paying back a whole lot more than whatever the cost is, and we need to do more of this for our community, so just keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We now move to the consent agenda. These are items that are deemed to be routine in nature, and I'll ask if any aldermen want to pull anything from the consent agenda.
6E, please.
Which one?
6E.
E?
E, yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 6E?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, we're going to try this. We're going to start the vote now, and each of us will vote. And when I see that we've had everybody voting, I will display it. Yours is not showing up. It is showing up now. Oh, you can see this up on the screen, and I'll go ahead and leave it up until we have our next vote. And Madam Clerk, do you want to affirm the
So
vote?
the motion on the consent agenda, which included all items except for 6E, passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, that worked. That's great. Yay. Yeah, one giant step for mankind. All right. So item 6E, Alderman Lauer, do you want to lead off discussion on that?
Sure, thank you very much. I just feel like this is a discretionary item, and it, along with the number of other discretionary items, could be put off to a later date. It is not indicated that it is unsafe. It is not indicated that it has depreciated to a point at which it's not usable. I don't feel like asking my constituents in Ward 1 for a tax increase for items such as this at this time. Thank you.
David, do you want to remark? on
Yes,
this,
let me
or-
have John Kennedy come forward and ask Mr. Kennedy to comment on the need for this equipment and kind of your capital program to continue to replace equipment of this nature and this unique opportunity we have with this particular manufacturer. So, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, City Manager Hales. Good question. You know, Alderman Lauer, I do agree that there was not any mention of it being against code. Currently, it does meet safety compliance. It does meet code. Some things about it is it does lack in, you know, what the users find in as far as not being nearly up to date as far as the play apparatus. You know, it's older and dated, and it's not offer some of the newer technology in different areas of play is feedback we have received. In particular, and as City Manager mentioned here, this we do tend to try to replace our playground equipment in the 12 to 15 year range. This equipment was actually installed in 1994, so by the time we get to it, it'll be about 20 years. So we have really, especially the last 5 years, delayed quite a bit of playground replacement program. So understand the concern. Do realize it has been, you know, a slowdown in that process. This particular grant program was an opportunity that, you know, they built it as a 100% match. I look at it as a 50-50 match, but it's a great value at a time to take advantage of that. We looked at that opportunity as well as, you know, the other things that I mentioned.
Are there other questions or comments or a motion? Alderman Stearns.
Thanks. Are lights still coming on as they always have? I mean, has anything
Yeah.
changed about the light system?
No,
Okay,
not
thank
at
you.
all.
And just a question about the grant. What is the possibility that the grant, I'm reading this as an application, might not be approved?
We have been assured that, you know, by showing our interest in the discussion that we have had, that the grant dollars are earmarked for us if we so choose to take advantage of them.
And is that a state, I'm just curious about the origin of the grant. Is that state money or federal or?
It's a private dollars. It comes from the manufacturer. It's a manufacturing grant. It's not a state or federal grant.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or a motion? Alderman Pizzini.
I have questions and statements, but I'd like to make a motion to put this on the floor. So I move that we accept this as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. And your comments, please?
Yeah. Number one, we're a community that's known for its parks and very good parks, in fact. And I think this is one way to keep it that way. And when we have an opportunity to get $137,000 worth of work for $58,000, I think we have to look at that extra special. And I don't believe we ought to just keep moving things down the road. The reports we get show that we have a lot of deferred maintenance in the city. This at 20 years old is going to fit in that category. And if we don't do it now, it'll certainly cost us more later because the grant might not be there and we might have to replace more than what we're doing. So those are the reasons that I would like us to approve this.
Thank you. Are there other comments? Okay, seeing none, we're going to clear the results, I hope. All right, and we'll start voting again. All right. We're all voting. It's completed.
The results on 6E are 7A, 2 nay, and the nays are Alderman Lauer and Alderman Stearns.
Okay, thank you. All right. We'll move on to our regular agenda, which is a presentation on the City of Bloomington assessment of conditions of our property. David, would you kick us off with this?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. Just want to briefly mention that a little over 5 years ago, as I came here to the city, we had one capital master plan at that time, and that was the parks, and it was still in the process of being updated. Since that time, and as we came through some significant financial recovery, we began to put time and effort in trying to put together what we're referring to as a 20-year capital improvement program. Council has received prior reports on sanitary sewer and stormwater. We're still working on, you've also received information on a draft downtown streetscape master plan, and we continue work on others. There has been some work on some elements of the water capital improvement plan as well. But tonight, we're pleased to bring to you a very important completion of a report dealing with the assessment of the condition of the city's facilities. You might recall that as we've talked about previous repairs to parking garages and even some of the buildings, unfortunately what we lacked is a very realistic and an expert-done condition assessment so that we could begin to budget and to plan on a regular basis what can we do to save the city money so that rather than deal with condition repairs when they fail, when they're at the crisis point, our intent is to be much more proactive and to deal with facility repairs in a methodical, organized way over time so that we can make sure that we spend the least amount of dollars but get the greatest benefit to get the maximum life and use of the city's investments in various buildings and other facilities. At this time, I'd like to ask Barb Atkins, Deputy City Manager, to come forward. She's just going to give you a few other comments and then introduce our main speaker tonight, who is with Faithful Gould, and he'll present further information on the report, their findings, and what this means in the way of our future financial plan of how to make sure we preserve the investment we've made in these important facilities. Ms. Atkins.
Thank you, City Manager Hales, Mayor Pro Temp, and Council. This has been a long time coming. As the City Manager talked about a little bit, 5 years ago, we were hitting and missing. We had a capital improvement program, but we never had one for all of our facilities. In this fiscal year, you all did allocate dollars for us to have this assessment done, and you also approved us to work with Faithful Gold. And I think when you all hear them tonight, you will see why staff recommended them. Their approach was so detailed and hands-on, and we actually now can capture and look in real time as to what we have not been doing on a regular basis and what we need to be doing over the next, say, 5 to 10 years. About $250,000 over the last, 5 years have been allocated in facilities management to do projects that when our facility manager talks with the departments as to what they would like to see done in their facilities. There was really no rhyme and reason if it was new carpet, if it was new paint, etc. What this report will do, it will give you the structural integrity of our buildings as well as the mechanicals that we have to keep up to date. Some are out of date. We can't even get parts for them anymore. So with that in mind, I'd like to bring up Benjamin Dutton. He is the Vice President for Faithful Goal, and he has a presentation and will be available certainly for all of your great questions, and he will have great answers for you. So at this time, I'd bring up Benjamin.
Thank you, Bob. Good evening. Thank you to start with for inviting me to be here this evening and share the results of our facility condition assessment, a project that for the last 6 months we have been working on, looking at the condition of your buildings, analyzing the data, working out how best to sort that data to make or to create an executable capital plan for the city. I'm going to just give you a little bit of background as to myself and the service line that I run. I run a service at Faithful and Gould called Strategic Facility Consulting, and it's a service that works with hundreds of property owners each year, be it federal government, state government, local government, higher education, large private owners of property, and helping them understand what they have relative to their properties, what the condition is of their property, and most importantly, what they need to spend on their property over a capital term. Here today to present the work that we completed for City of Bloomington under that scope. So we're going to start the presentation by outlining the objective and the scope of the survey, and then delve into the funding. How much funding is required over the study period for the condition assessment, how much funding by department, and then we're going to close by talking about why you need to do this work and what the consequence would be based on our experience with similar municipalities, the consequence of not doing this work. So the objective of the facility condition assessment is to obviously identify the condition of your buildings. So we had a team of engineers, a team of architects, a team of building surveyors visit each of your buildings, a total of 49 buildings, and look at how the buildings go together and the condition of all the systems, any system that can represent a potential capital cost. So site systems, structural, roofing, exterior, mechanical systems, electrical, plumbing, fire life safety, code compliance, disabled access, interiors, basically anything that can represent capital expenditure. Once we identified conditions, we then determined what would need to be done and when it would need to be done and how much it would cost. And for your city, we completed a 10-year capital expenditure forecast, starting fiscal 15, projecting out 10 years. For each of the next 10 years, what you need to do for each of your buildings and what would the cost of that be. And these are the big picture results, and I think you've received the executive summary beforehand and also the presentation, so you've probably seen these numbers. In assessing your 49 buildings, we came up with many hundred recommendations of work that needed to be completed over the next 10 years for each of the systems. In order to provide a level of granularity, to be able to create a consequential, an accurate, and an implementatable capital plan, we have categorized the deficiencies by various matrices. The first is deferred maintenance, and basically deferred maintenance categorizes anything that really should have been done in the past and hasn't been done. So that's really catch-up work. And if you look at your deferred maintenance values, you'll see that in 2015 and in 2016, you've got some fairly significant amount of work that really needs to be done now that hasn't been done, really due to a lack of funding on your facilities. So in 2015 and 2016, your capital requirements are significantly more than the outer years, really, as you catch up. So 2015, a $7.7 million capital requirement. 2016, $7 million capital requirement. And then in 2017, once you've caught up from that deferred maintenance, the capital requirement starts to spread out. Couple of points on the capital requirements, on what these numbers represent and on what these numbers don't represent. They don't include operating costs. They don't include maintenance costs. And they don't include for improvement or repositioning of the facilities. They really include for maintaining the status quo, repairing defective conditions, replacing defective systems. Furthermore, for your public works buildings, particularly your public work building, your engineering building and your public work garage, these capital expenditure forecasts assume an approach of capital cost avoidance, that at some point within the next 5 years, those buildings will go away. So the only capital investment made on those buildings is really emergency repair and life extension maintenance. In addition, on your fire stations, it doesn't include for necessarily improvement of your fire stations to allow for demographic changes. It's really just for condition-related expenditures.
Benjamin, I just want to emphasize again, I think all of you may recall the Five Bugles report that was generated back January and February. We provided those reports to Benjamin and his staff. They reviewed them. But again, what they didn't do is duplicate those recommendations. Those recommendations have a lot to say about expanding, renovating, changing the layout of those buildings to meet modern day demands. So we specifically wanted to but what Five Bugles didn't necessarily do is look at as much as some of these HVA systems, et cetera, et cetera. So we tried to be very careful and to make sure that the Five Bugles and the Faith and Gold reports are not duplicating. So keep in mind there still is this need to totally, redesign some of those stations to meet the next 30, 40 years of use and how the use of the buildings has changed. But included is also the need to address some of these HVACs. So I just wanted to mention that to the councils. Thanks.
Yeah, as Dave said, our report was really looking at condition, and the Five Bugles was more suitability. So looking across the 10-year capital horizon considered by our condition assessment report and the $33.6 million of capital need that's required across your buildings, and that's in present day value. We're often asked the question of how do we compare to other municipalities? Are we having to spend a significant amount of money on our buildings because they're old, because they're not maintained, because we've not invested adequate funds in the past? And really, our findings on your buildings were that they were maintained well. They're generally good buildings, but there just hasn't been the adequate level of ongoing capital replacement and capital repair required to really address a lot of the defective conditions we've seen. And that really results in this 2015, 2016 spike in catch-up work, in deferred maintenance. So we went through the exercise of looking back at capital outlay other municipal clients have undertaken, and also looking at industry standards. And there's an industry standard, and this was replicated by our work, that says you should spend between 1 and 2% of the value of your buildings per year on capital replacement. So if you look at $250 million value of your buildings, you should be spending between 1 and 2 million, so between 1 and 2% of that amount each year on capital. And the line up here shows that range, bottom line 1%, top line 2%, shows that really if you take away your deferred maintenance, your catch-up work, if you even out the capital spend per year, you're right at about that 1% of building value for capital expenditure spend each year. So you're right in line. Really, this is what you should be spending based on your facilities, based on what we see our other condition assessment clients spending. In addition to categorizing the deficiencies by defect type, we also categorized it by system type, be it building infrastructure or mechanical systems, and this really kind of gives you a snapshot of where most of your capital spend is coming from, and most of it is on your infrastructure, your roofs, your pavements, your exteriors, the elements that are really hit hard by the weather, areas where historically there's been repair made after repair made after repair made, and the system can no longer be repaired anymore. It's time and it's overdue for replacement of those items. Then expenditure by department. The largest departmental expenditure was on the water department, and that's where most of the risks were found. Oops. So we've talked about the capital requirements. You've got a fairly good amount of money that needs to be spent on your building. So you have really the options of, do you start to fund your buildings for ongoing capital repair and capital replacement, or do you continue to defer those expenditures? And I wanted to really share some of the experiences that we've had with different clients who have embraced the condition assessment, embraced it as a strategic plan of, okay, we know what we've got to do with our facilities, we know what we have to spend, and we're gonna start funding those capital requirements. And then the other clients who don't want to defer, don't want to address that funding, consider the building's long life elements that can be repaired and repaired and repaired. So option one, what we see from clients who defer the funding for capital expenditures, really an increase in maintenance costs, and I think you've seen this already, this reactive maintenance, addressing conditions as they fail, addressing roof leaks as they fail, where you have a roof, for instance, that is in a poor condition, but funding isn't there for replacement, so there's repair after repair after repair, and you're just spending good money after bad trying to repair a system. Decrease in user comfort, and this is what we saw at a lot of your buildings as we talked to the residents. Hot and cold issues, mechanical systems are outdated, mechanical systems that are obsolete, inability to maintain user comfort, and then increased liability and increased risk. Looking across your portfolio, and as we categorized expenditures by priority type, we found that you've got a little bit over $1 million of priority one items, which we categorize as life safety code compliance issues that really need to be addressed almost immediately at the start of your next fiscal year. And then higher eventual replacement cost. By not taking a strategic approach towards your facilities, by replacing on an emergency basis, you're not able to really plan for items. You're not able to get bids and get good designs. You're paying a premium for work because you're having to do it on an emergency basis. The result of not funding your capital requirements will be that eventually you're going to have to spend more money. The dollars that we have in the presentation in the condition assessment reports, you're going to have to spend that whether it's funded or not. The only difference being, do you spend that amount of money? If it's funded, you spend that amount of money. If it's not funded, you'll spend that, and you'll spend the premium of having to address roof leaks, having to make emergency repairs, not being able to take a strategic approach. Let's look on the other hand. We fund the expenditures. We say, okay, we have a plan. We know what we've got to spend. Let's work out how we're going to spend it, because we're going to have to spend it whether we're ready or not. Firstly, we're going to be able to replace items when they're most effective. We're not going to have to replace. We're not going to have to wait for complete failure of a system. We'll be able to replace when it suits us. We'll be able to replace the roof in the summer. We'll be able to look across our portfolio and say, okay, we want to replace all of our defective roofs next year. So let's say we have 6 defective roofs. We're going to go to multiple contractors. We're going to get one design. We're going to save money by economy of scale across our buildings. You're going to reduce the liability. You're going to be able to replace items before they become a risk to the city. And then you're going to reduce the eventual replacement cost again. You're not going to spend significant amounts of money on repair and maintenance. You're going to be able to replace when it's most effective. Okay, and I think that was the last slide. I want to open for questions.
Alderman Pizzini?
Yeah, really good to start with. I have a suggestion. I see the first year, 2015, almost $8 million. The second year, 2016, over $7 million. So altogether, we're looking at about $15 million in a budget. It's sort of tough to put that.
Yes.
But here's a suggestion. If the council members would remember in our Administration and Finance Committee when we proposed a $10 million bond for streets and sewers, we said it was just phase 1, and there's going to be a phase 2 and a phase 3 and a phase 4. This is phase 2.
Yes.
This really ought to be a $15 million bond, and with the rates as low as they are, now's the time to do that. With the payback coming over 10 or 15 years, whatever we chose, we're going to be paying back in cheaper dollars. So we're not only saving the money that you talked about, we're paying it back with cheaper dollars. We can even out our payments. A 15-year bond over 10 years would probably be about $1.5 million a year. So we could even that payment out, but get the work done quicker. And not only would we save money like you described, but we would also have reduced material costs because every year we wait, things go up.
And you would have reduced operating costs because the buildings would be less maintenance intensive.
Yeah. So I think what you presented is right. I just believe that we ought to do more of it quickly and pay it back over a longer period because city councils in the past have left this to us. And there's no use us taking a big gulp and putting $8 million in the 2015 budget and another $7 million plus in the 2016 budget when we can spread it out. And most of the things we're fixing are going to last 10, 15, 20, 25 years.
Hopefully a long time.
Long time. So we could easily do a bond that matched that, a 15-year bond, a 20-year bond, and keep the cost down to about $1 million a year. So as we're thinking about this, I accept everything that you presented as logical and valid, and we have a lot of catch-up to do, and we could catch up quickly and then spread the cost over a longer period. Yeah, just a thought.
Thank you. Alderman Sage, then Fruin, then Lauer.
A couple questions.
Yes, sir.
You talked specifically about some life safety issues,
Yes.
and I think those are more critical and more pressing. Specifically, what type of task or work or renovation are you talking about when you say life safety?
There were a few, or I think the conditions on life safety kind of varied from um, areas that would impact the safety of the users and areas that would result in failure of the buildings themselves. So they varied in severity. And one thing that we also did, and this is in the full condition report, we ranked everything by a scoring matrix. So you can actually look, and anything that's 64 is the highest risk rating, right down to 0. So you can look per building what each of the worst conditions
But
are.
to provide some context or some framework around that, what specifically are are you referencing or thinking of in one or more of our facilities that in terms of what needs to be done?
Of course, you would have areas where there could be inadequate egress. You have areas where there's potentially structural issues relative to wall systems or roof systems, fire alarm systems not operational. So things like that, which are not, they could be worse, and we see worse, but they need to be addressed quickly.
Okay. And then my other question, you have an area or department called facility management, in for instance, something approaching a $2 million expenditure for next year. I'm assuming, are we talking, is that primarily the parking garages?
Do you want to answer that, David? The facility
Or
management?
when we say facility management,
Are you
that shows a
looking
department.
at the back last page of the executive summary? No, let me see if I see it right.
But no, but I think facility management would include your parking garages, this building, more of the kind of office,
Okay.
Office use facilities.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sorry, Alderman
I'm not
Fruin.
sure. Thank you. I can't let this opportunity pass up to my colleague here, to my favorite alderman from the 8th Ward. But he mentioned roads was the first phase, and this is the second phase, and sometime I'm going to ask him how many phases we've got to go here.
Good question.
5 phases. There's
Small
prioritization here, so. Anyway, you are my favorite alderman from the 8th Ward.
At least tonight.
I don't know, make this a short answer because I'm not sure where it's going, but you see other municipalities in this kind of a predicament.
Yes.
Lots of needs and wants on the books already and more expenditures forthcoming. Do you see any trend how other cities are handling this kind of situation? I'm just dreaming here, but do you ever sell off your assets? Do you ever rent back, sell and rent back? Do you, what are the different scenarios how some are handling it? Could be through a bond issuance or something like that. So what do you see others doing?
The majority will go for a bond issuance. They know they have issues with their facilities. They bring us in to tell them, how big the issues are, what it's going to cost, and when they need to address it, and then they go out to bond issuance and typically try and address things in 5-year cycles. That's the preferred way. We do have some cities where, and there's one, I won't name them, but we went in and we did a condition assessment, and they decided not to listen to us. Probably 4 years ago. Now they're selling their buildings to fund this work because they realised, okay, they do have to do it, whether it's funded or not. So it's almost a fire sale on their major office buildings. So short answer is most people who plan will go in a bond route.
Thank you. And one question I'd like to ask David is, if we've got 48.9 buildings, do we have some that we might want to sell or that are marketable to the public? Or how do we determine which buildings those are.
Well, first, let me just say that we are going to be looking at how do we finance these type of improvements and needs. But we're also looking at how do we finance what has come back from the findings on the sanitary sewer master plan. That's 139 million, about 40 million over 5 years, including storm sewer. We've got to also be looking at operational needs. We've been talking about some of those tonight. So right now, we're on a very aggressive timeline to try and bring as many of these master plans together and put together some realistic options of how do we begin to address those and how do we make the price tag affordable in our community. Um, but like you say, there is, I, I'm not saying we'll recommend it, but the city owns and operates a water supply and distribution system. Some cities have sold all their water system assets to private companies, which are out there, that would buy that up, things like that. But there's a lot of disadvantages in doing those types of things too. And I think the worst thing we could do is try to feel like we have to rush into any quick decision without fully vetting how we can look at all our capital needs as well as our operating needs and look at various scenarios of how to fund it. Furthermore, I'm a strong advocate that as we pull together this 20-year capital improvement plan, the elected officials and staff shouldn't feel like it all has to weigh on our shoulders. Our residents, our businesses, we all have a stake, in the investment that has been made in the capital infrastructure of this community. And oftentimes when you face these very significant and these large dollar figures, I think that's an opportunity for some very significant citizen outreach and get the business community and the others on board so that they are part of the solution and part of the discussion of how do we afford these. Uh, because, it's my opinion, when we start looking at all these master plans together, we cannot afford doing everything maybe it's being recommended right now. But, there may be some ways to turn this 10-year plan into a 20-year plan. And there may be many of these assets belong to the water enterprise fund or the sewer or the stormwater. Those do have their own source of revenue through water, sewer, and stormwater fees. Unfortunately, some of the general fund assets do not, and they rely more on the general fund, taxing revenue. So but we're achieving the first step, and that is to have a realistic assessment of what those needs are. And I think that's critical because in the past, we didn't know, what that assessment was. But going forward, we can now plan more appropriately and look at all the options. But I'm a proponent that I think phase two needs to be this total context of facilities, sewer, stormwater, even some operational pension funding, as we've talked about, et cetera. We have to look at that big picture to make sure that we're not losing sight of, it's like the $1 million life safety. We're focusing on that right now as staff. That's something that is very critical as well as some of the other items. So, but this is the type of information, our staff hasn't had in 5 years. In fact, just some of the observations they brought to our attention. Even the Pepsi Center garage was a situation where they brought to our attention some of their observations with their experts, to bring something to our attention that we're looking into right now. So, but ultimately going forward, we will be putting together some financial plans. I think we have a lot of great opportunities with our debt load, 50% being paid off in 10 years. There's some very creative things we can do on a bond issuance, to try to look at some critical needs in all these areas, including facilities. It's just a matter of time, but this is a critical first step. Now that we're aware, we can begin to go forward and put together, much more specifics. What we haven't given you tonight is the detailed volume page after page of the information on each and every site. Those are things each director and their staff is looking at. So we're doing some review and trying to see is there anything else that needs to be taken into to account. But we want to take a holistic approach and to bring all these things together. My hope is, even in some things we're doing at staff level, is maybe by February, be ready to start to bring to you some very specific recommendations how to address these and the other needs that I've mentioned.
Alderman Lauer.
Yeah, I think you've kind of covered some of what my questions were. I'm kind of a nuts and bolts guy. I've got to be able to feel it, touch it, smell it, see
Right.
it. I'm a systems analyst from a hardcore perspective, and I just got to be able to see what's failing and understand why we're having to make these investments and when. And one of the things I think that it's good looking forward at is to take a step back when we're looking at an individual facility and look at what we originally had for life expectancy, and then look at new technologies. Say we're talking about a roof replacement. There's new technologies out there that were not there when the building was originally built. We may be able to take advantage of and extend the life of. So I'm sure that you've covered all those. I just haven't been exposed to that, and I'm curious. I'll put it that way. Thanks.
And I think your point's very right. And as we went through and made our recommendations, and take the roof example, we'll go through a life cycle analysis to say what is going to be the cheapest roof, not just the cheapest roof to install, but over the life. You know, what's the cheapest based on installation cost and estimated useful life, you know, energy savings, and then that's our recommendation. And that's also one of the beauty of you know, as you execute this plan, being able to group expenditures and really drive down those costs. And David and Bob have copies of the condition assessment reports, and it very much talks to why you've got to do things. You know, our recommendations are not just, you know, your roof was installed 21 years ago and it had an estimated use life of 20 years, therefore replace it. It's based on these are the conditions, this is what's going to happen if it leaks, this is the cost if it leaks, these are the benefits you're going to get if you replace it. You know, we very much talk to consequence of inaction. You know, people don't want to spend money. People don't want to spend money on their facilities. But talking to, you've got to do these things. If you don't do it, you're going to spend more money, is the kind of the basis core of kind of how we approach a lot of our recommendations.
Alderman Mwambe and then Alderman Stearns.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the great work. I think it was long overdue. It's kind of unfortunate we find ourselves in this situation, but I guess it makes me think that we should have a plan down the road for things like this not to happen again, so that we don't have so much deferred maintenance. So my question, I guess, is for the city manager, is, you know, what do we have in place in terms of either structure or plan to make sure that maybe in 10 years we go through the same process again, you know, of continually reviewing and assessing the condition of our facilities. And then how do we develop a policy that makes sure that we don't pass it on to the next councils, you know, because it seems like, you know, some of these issues have been passed on over the years to the point where we are now. So what do we do now as a council to make sure that in the future something like this doesn't happen? Do we develop a repair and reserve policy or something like that? That's what it's called. I think Alderman Fazzini referred to a sinking fund earlier. You know, in other lines of work, it's referred to as a repair and reserve policy. So that's my question.
A couple of quick, you know, comments. First and foremost, I think we're doing the things that we should be doing right now, as whereas in the past we never had these kind of detailed assessments, these detailed master plans. So we couldn't even put together a 5, 10, 20-year capital improvement program. So first and foremost, we're putting together the plan, we're doing the studies, we're bringing in the experts. We're trying to not just give subjective judgments, we're trying to be very objective as to what the needs are, and on a year-to-year and multi-year basis, make sure the elected officials know if we don't fund these, at this level, what are the consequences? So on the one hand, it is much more open and transparent. The citizens, the public, as well as the elected officials, staff are going to see all this information. They're going to know what the needs are, what the consequences are if you don't. But ultimately, I think it comes back to political courage, because what we're talking about here, sewer, stormwater, streets, operational, you're talking about more money. And you either have to raise revenue, you need to make cuts on expenditures or a balance. And ultimately, we have to, reach that fine line balance is what is the price of government our citizens and our businesses want to pay for. So it's got to be a very inclusive process to help make sure that everyone understands the consequences of not funding this particular facility improvement or that sewer, elimination of a CSO in this location and things of that nature. And the more we can do that with the citizens and businesses, and having much more robust engagement discussion than we've ever had, that to me is key to help make sure when the decision or the time comes to make the decision, you have support of the community. We all have support of the community for the financial plan that we're going to come up with, which includes continuing to make this city great. And to me, I think as we talk about economic development and all the other efforts being made, now is not the time to reduce our investments. It is actually the time to continue to upgrade and make more investments, because we're in very difficult competition to keep businesses here, to bring new businesses here, to minimize that impact on the residential taxpayers, because we need that commercial and industrial development, to help make sure that we can afford these things. So it's a long-term process, and but I think as we get ready for our comp plan update and community visioning, things like that, I believe that all this information provides a great foundation to have some very serious, discussions with our community. What does it take to continue and even to enhance, what we have here in the Bloomington area? But so those are just a few thoughts.
And for me, specifically on how one updates the condition assessment so it doesn't die. It's the condition assessment product is delivered in both hard copy and also within a database system. So the intent being that database system is updated as projects are completed, they're ticked off and they fall to their next repair or replacement cycle. So internally you're able to maintain an active and accurate capital plan. Most municipalities on a 5-year cycle will have an outside consultant come in and update the information, but annually will maintain that data.
Alderman Stearns?
Just a question for David, a very specific question with hopefully an easy answer. Are we committed to all of these buildings? I mean, we are absolutely committed that the city needs every single one of these buildings, and we are going to maintain. I think the empty fire station, for one, is on here, so I guess I'm a little bit...
Absolutely not. And that wasn't, part of the scope of work for these gentlemen.
Right.
And we've been, as you know, there's been some demolishment of buildings going on. In fact, that's also part of what is staff, is just as we look at the old Public Works facility down here. Mm-hmm. That is not going to serve our future needs. Right. Ultimately, we want to keep those expenses minimal. Right. But unfortunately, we've got to start planning for the future facility, for public works, water, parks, maintenance facilities. Right. There's some great opportunities to achieve economies of scale, and also to have some further discussion with our other governmental counterparts and say, how can we work together and not every entity have its own fleet maintenance facility, say? What lessons can we learn from others who have tried to save money in a cooperative manner with other governmental units?
I'm just wondering if, the question of which of these buildings are we committed to might not come before the question of what do they need to be, what do they need to be updated and maintained. I guess I'm a little confused with, this huge list of buildings and one of them being empty and seemingly,
And that's what
useless.
staff
Thank
is
you.
doing right now as part of its 20-year capital improvement plan. We'll start to answer and add that additional information.
Thank you. Alderman Black and then Pizzini.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Ben.
Ben, thank you so much for your time and effort in this presentation. I mean, I know that's it's a lot of work, and this is kind of the over the high level, the 35,000 feet, as opposed to the nuts and bolts, which I'm looking forward to digging into. I just want to offer this as a commentary. I like to give staff direction, and I prefer an aggressive approach with these sorts of things. I'd like to see us, I would amenable to the idea of the bond. I think that's a good way to address financially some of these challenges that we're facing. But that being said, we can't overlook some of the other issues that we're facing. However, I always favor a long-term savings over a short-term savings. So, in experience in the county and to some extent here, when faced with two options of, well, this will save us money now versus the long-term, I'm going to go with whatever is the long-term. That, to me, it's a better value. And I think that the data that you're going to be presenting as part of, looking at some of these facility upgrades is going to include some of those choices, I would imagine, correct?
Yeah, it's our approach is very much a long term, that the buildings will continue to function, and when a system fails, you'll want to put a good system back, which will continue to function in a building for 10,
Absolutely.
15,
And
20.
from this perspective, I like the idea of getting a lot of these things off of our radar so we can focus on more high-level things, because when we let our buildings decay and we push off maintenance, then we have to go from emergency to emergency to emergency, crisis to crisis to crisis, and we can never truly grow as a community. And as we talk about economic development, we talk about bringing people here, we talk about growing our local economy, we need to have facilities that are able to handle that growth. And to the point that Alderman Sturz was making, I wouldn't want to see us invest in buildings that we're not interested in maintaining or even keeping and maybe be able to sell. My long-term, I'm talking 30, 40-year vision of Bloomington is to have, most of our facilities combined with the other governmental entities in, one big space, with library, city hall, parking decks, parks, so we can bring people here, engage in the process, and make Bloomington what it should be. And that doesn't happen when we make bad investments. And I think creating a good strategy like we've done here is the first step in the right direction. So I appreciate your work.
Alderman Pizzini.
Yeah, I'll make 3 comments. The first one is we should use the big numbers that we're working on rather than worrying about whether or not we can get rid of 2 or 3 buildings, because we probably can, and we might even be able to sell some, but some of the buildings we're going to have to demolish, and it's going to actually cost us to demolish. And then whatever we do get rid of, in many cases, we're going to have to replace and have a new building, and that's going to add more cost than we save by selling or demolishing buildings. So I'd rather just focus on your numbers and say, we're going to have some pluses and some minuses, but they're going to come out something like this. So that's number one. Number two, to address Councilman Fruin, how many phases? Well, one of the advantages of having the aldermanic committees was all of the committees got to delve more into it, and I was looking at 5 phases. The streets, deferred maintenance that we're talking about right here, sewers, pensions, and then the stormwater. Those were the 5 phases. And even if only 3 or 4 of them come to pass, doing the streets first was necessary. Just as an example, if we could have an income stream of about $4 million, and there are a couple ways I could tell you how we can get that, we could do a bond issue for $50 million, and it wouldn't affect our bond rating. And we'd have the money to pay for it automatically. And that's based on $800,000 at 15 years was going to get us a $10 million bond. So all you have to do is the math, multiply each of those by 5. So we have the capacity to come up with a $50 million bond issue, and we've already come up with 10 at nice low rates, just by having $4 million income stream that we can dedicate to it. And that could come from the utility tax, a locomotive fuel tax. It could come from other fees, wherever you want to get it. But that's the math, and that's what we were doing in the Finance Committee and trying to bring it to you in phases, and then the committees became defunct. So hope that helps.
Alderman McDade?
Just wanted to say thank you for an excellent plan. I know that for the last several years, we've appreciated that this maintenance needed to be done. We've always looked for a way to quantify that a little bit more, so I really appreciate that we have that opportunity. I guess I'm just interested in kind of next steps. It sounds like obviously this will drive out during the budget process and things like that, but just kind of interested in what your thoughts are there. If you need anything from us or...
Yeah, first off, the next step is staff will be reviewing this. Then we want to make the entire report and all the information available to the council and the public. In fact, we're still doing that with the sewer and storm drain. There's 900 pages of information in the sewer and stormwater master plan that you haven't seen yet. The staff is still reviewing, so there's still a lot of review going on, but we're also trying to put a quick effort to pull out some of the most critical needs from this and several of these other sewer and stormwater plan and et cetera, and seeing what are those things that both the consultant staff agree are critical, that really we can't delay much longer. And if there was another bond issue, what would that entail in the way of looking at many of these different areas? And how will revenue be addressed, for that. It is a work in progress. We're dealing both with in-house staff, some outside experts to assist us, and we're trying to work through that. But first, we have to get the pension funding policy approved, and that's a chore in and of itself. So we hope you'll help us with that in the next couple of weeks.
So can I just say one quick tag onto that? I don't know which one of these is more fun, by the way, that one or this one. I'm not, that's just a hot debate I'm having with myself. But, I would just say that I'm, again, excited that we have more of these plans. And I guess what I would say is as we look forward to our time together in our 2-day work session in November, and then as we look into the budget season, I really hope that to some degree it's as driven by these plans as it can possibly be, because I just know, having gone through that process in the past, always wishing that there was more, data and more evidence and more ways to quantify things. And I just think to the extent that we can try to ground some of our conversations, in these materials, understanding that they're still in progress and the final reports are still to be written. But I know that's my observation about what we've always struggled with in the past as we go to prioritize is, not necessarily having all of that quantified. Now that we do, I really hope this can serve as a foundation, kind of as a basis to drive as much of that as possible. And I'll try to say that only one time right now.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for your presentation. Any other comments on this?
Once again, there's no action for the council
Right.
tonight. We're presenting this to you, and we hope in the near future to present to you the full report with the detail, including, whatever staff analysis is being done at that point in
All right.
time.
I appreciate everybody's very hard work on this. It's really terrific.
Thanks very
Okay.
much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. All right. City manager's discussion?
Actually, I don't have anything else tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor's discussion. I'm just hoping Mayor Renner has a safe and fast trip back. How about the rest of you, Alderman Pizzini?
Yeah, for those of you who got here in the light, I hope you saw the water fountain out in the front. And the reason I mention it is Alderman Fruin and I went to 6 other cities about a year ago, and so did Mboka Milamwe and Mayor Stockton, I think, out of this group. And one thing we noticed every time is each of the 6 looked better than we did on the outside and on the inside. And now I think they don't. That is a beautiful fountain, and I was impressed that we didn't go out and hire a design team or people to build it. From what I understand from Deputy City Manager Bob Atkins, we did it. We, the people in the city. And I think that's fantastic. They did a great job. I think they deserve a big hand.
Yeah, yeah.
John, Jim, thank you very much, guys. It really, when you walk into a place and you're already feeling good, it makes it easier, and we do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that well-deserved shout out. Anybody else? Motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? Aye, we are done. Don't let me be too excited about